Um, well, I didn't really want to follow Brandon, but now that our groups are combined, Medicare and Final Expense, I get to. So what an honor it is to be up here on the same platform with such incredible speakers. So I am going to be talking a little bit today on something that's going to help you whether you're doing Final Expense or the Medicare or mortgage, anything, and that is building rapport and building rapid rapport, because we are in the home for a short period of time, and we have to build rapport quickly. So this is something that no matter what you're doing, you can build rapport. The faster you build it, the better. So some of the reasons why rapid rapport is so important is you have about, 45 minutes to an hour from the time that you meet someone to you need to have all their personal information. And while you're in the home, this happens to me all the time, I'm hearing on the news, senior gets scammed, beware, beware. So these people are constantly fed with things in their minds about scams that are out there. And so a lot of times there's guards that are raised. You come in, they may or may not remember the card that you sent in. They may or may not want you in their home. Some of our clients love to have us in their home, some don't. And so our job is to quickly lower guards and build trust. So you have to bring down the guards and raise the trust. So rapport is simply just a mutual understanding, a mutual connectedness between what they understand and what you're wanting them to understand. It's communicating well. So we have a few minutes to build rapport, and I'm going to talk through the basics of rapport building. So this is going to be like the really practical stuff that you're doing out in the field. This is not technical. I'm not a technical person. I like the very practical, the human relational side of things. So this is going to be something that hopefully you'll be able to take what I'm sharing and begin applying it immediately. So we have a lot of things that we need to get information on. Basically, the most vital information in someone's life, their most personal, protected information, you need to get. And so how do you build rapport? I'm going to go through the different steps of rapport building and how to do it really rapidly, how to get it done fast. So the rapider, I know that's not a word, the better, because you want to get in there, you have a short window of time. What would you guys say the average time is that you're in a home? 40 minutes. 2 hours, whoa. Whew. I would go broke if I was in a home for 2 hours. That would, 45 minutes. 45 minutes is my average time. Between 30 minutes and an hour, depending on the product, depending on the situation. Another reason why you want to be very rapid, the more people you see, the more people you can help. And this is a service group. One Life has talked about it. We want to be helping people. And the more people you help, the more money you can make. So very important here with doing this. Have you guys ever been in a home when you just know you're not building rapport and you're just like, I don't know what to do. I can't break down the walls. I can't lower their guard and raise their trust. Well, we're going to go through some of those steps, and it's really important to know where you're at in the rapport building. And some of this takes practice. Some of it is something, a skill that you can develop. So I had this house that I was in a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I asked the lady, she told me she had a policy, she was just sent the card in wanting to get some more coverage. I said, oh, that's great, very good, who's your policy with? I don't know. Okay, good, moved on a little bit, and I said, no, where's your policy at? Oh, I don't know, I have no idea where it's at. I knew right then I hadn't built rapport because she, a hoarder, she knew where everything was at. Like she had grabbed a couple of things. She grabbed her purse from the floor at one point. She did a couple different things. And so I was like, okay, I haven't built rapport because she's not willing to pull out her policy. That's a good indication. Well, we kept talking, and let me give you a little background on this house. I was with a gentleman who I was training, very dignified man, probably 60 years old, somewhere around there. We walk into the house, and it's one of those houses where not only did I want to build rapport to quickly to help her out, I also wanted to get out so I could breathe. Those houses, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, so I was in there, I'm like, whew. And so I turned to Steve, the guy who's with me, and I said, hey, you can sit over here or you can stand. And I gave him the or you can stand look, like you don't want to sit down. And he didn't quite understand the or you can stand, and my eyebrows meant don't sit down. Well, he sat down. And so I'm sitting there next to the lady, and I asked her about her policy. She says she doesn't know where it is. I said, okay, great. We keep talking. I'm building rapport, and I'm going through the steps that I'm going to take you through in just a minute. So I go through step after step. We get about 20 minutes in, And I said, now you said your policy was about $10,000 worth of coverage. You weren't really sure how much. I said, now you have everything in place with that. How much are you paying on it per month? At this point, she tells me how much she's paying. I was like, based on her health conditions, I didn't know of anything out there that she could get for that price. So I said, I'm really concerned that maybe what you have is not quite the best policy for you based on the things you've told me about your health. You've been really honest about your health. Do you have that policy handy? I asked again. At this point, I had built rapport, built credibility. Her guards were all down. Her trust was up. And she was like, yeah, my policy's right there. So we grabbed the policy, looked through it. I said, I know this company. It's a good company. I actually work for them myself. They have great programs. But you told me about your health, and sure enough, opened the policy up. Someone had clean sheeted an application 6 months before. I showed her everything. She got very upset that had happened to her, and I was able to help her take care of it, work it out. So get all done, help her out. We call the company with this other policy, explain the situation. They say, hey, write us a letter, put the information in it, send the policy back. Yes, it's not a good policy. And I was able to help her out, get her a good policy with her, everything that she needed with her health. Where was that? Well, we get out to the car. And by the way, I want to take you through the steps of rapport building in just a minute, but I have to tell you the story. We get out to the car, and Steve's like, and I'm like, what? And he's like, oxygen, it's so good. And I was like, I know, right? And then we get there, and he's like, did you see that cat? I'm like, what about it? He's like, I think it was having seizures in front of me. It was just like, I said, yeah, I was kind of avoiding that. And then he's like, I itch all over. I'm like, I know. We all have those houses. Oh, let me mention, while we're in the house, lightning's going off, thunder. On the TV, turns from tornado watch to tornado warning, and our phones are all blowing up. Seat cover, get in a safe place, and I'm looking at them. They're like, we don't have a tornado shelter. I'm like, I'm going to be in the bathtub with these people. And at this point, she's also showing me the sores on herself, and she takes off her shirt to show me all the sores. And I'm like, ooh. So we help her out, get out. I was working rapid. I was in and out of there as fast as I could. Well, I get out, and Steve's like, I'm itching all over. I know I'm scaring some of you guys. And then we're driving. I stop at a stoplight. He's like, Helena? Helena? And I'm like, what? And I look over, and there's a bed bug crawling up his leg. And he goes to flick it off in my car. I was at a stop sign. I reached over, all professionalism aside, and I grabbed that bug off his leg, opened my door, and threw it out the door. And I looked down, and there's a bug crawling up my shirt. At this point, I'm like, we're done. We're going to Walmart. And we got the Raid. And I will have to say that I've been doing like essential oils and like no chemicals and everything. I was ready to bathe in this stuff. I'm like, spray me down. And so just picture, here I am in the Walmart parking lot with this dignified gentleman, and I'm standing here like this. Go ahead. Spray my back. So that he's doing it, we're spraying. He's like, do you see how everyone's looking at us? I said, I think it's normal here. And he's like, yeah, I think you're right. So there's a lot of reasons why rapport building is so important, but one of the reasons why you want to be rapid with it is so you can help a lot of people. I helped that lady. She was so thankful. She thanked me over and over and over again. But you also want to get out of those houses as quickly as you can to help more people, especially when it's a house like this. But we have fun, as you can see. Don't take things too seriously. If you did, you wouldn't be, selfieing with your bed bug spray. I did use self-checkout at Walmart, though. I was like, I am not going to look a cashier in the eye right now. So we got sprayed down. We actually ended up calling it a night. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening. I would have kept door knocking till dark, but at that point I was like, I just need to go get out of these clothes, make sure there's no more bugs sprayed on my car. And yeah, so anyway, lowering guards and raising trust is a two-step process. The first step to lowering guards is to create time restraints. If you're taking notes, write this down. Create time restraints. How many of you guys have ever been in a department store where a sales associate comes up to you and they start talking? And you're like, I don't want to be talking to them right now, even though you actually wanted to buy something, and you have no idea how long they're going to continue talking, so you give them non-descriptive answers, and you get away from them as quickly as possible so you can do your own shopping. A lot of people don't like to be talking with someone when they have no idea how long this is going to go on. And our clients will tell us, if you've been doing this for very long, you're going to hear someone say, man, I had someone who wouldn't leave my house. He was here for 3 hours, or he was here for 4 hours. So some of our clients are apprehensive when they get started with us that we're going to be there forever. And so there's different ways to create those time restraints, both verbally and non-verbally. So let me go through what I mean by verbally. When I'm at a door and I'm door knocking, I tell them, hey, this is just going to take me about 10 to 15 minutes to get you the information you requested. Yes, I know I'm going to be there for about 45 minutes, but my actual presentation part, I've timed myself. I want to make sure I'm speaking with integrity. It takes me 12 minutes to go through my presentation. And that's with my stories and everything. The rest of the time is spent doing the health questions, is spent asking them questions or answering their questions. So I tell them this is going to take me 10 to 15 minutes right at the door. Put that verbal time constraint there. If I'm on the phone, I'll do it like this. Now, when I get you the information, it's going to take 10 to 15 minutes. I have time around 10:15 tomorrow morning or 2:45. When I do that, it gives the impression that I have another appointment 15 minutes later. That's the mental thing. I'm not saying I set appointments every 15 minutes, but I'm letting them know this is a quick process because I want to lower their guards and raise the trust. I have had people time me. I have had people tell me that it took longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And usually I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Must not have had enough coffee this morning. And I didn't talk fast enough. Whatever. People don't get upset about that, though. Usually when someone's like, you took 45 minutes, I'm like, I'm so sorry. And then I'll kind of laugh. I was like, you had a lot of questions. And they laugh, and they're like, yeah, you're right. So create time restraints. Also, how many of you all door knock or do drive-bys, however you call it? Okay, great. How many of you guys carry a lead card with you when you're door knocking? Ah, good. How many of you guys carry a big old stack of lead cards at the door? Oh, wow, a lot less hands. If you carry a huge stack of leads, like I'll carry leads from like 6 months, it gives the impression that I have a ton of people to see, I'm very busy, I only have a few minutes to be in their house. And I hold that up, theirs is on the top, I hold up the big stack and I say, just takes 10 or 15 minutes to get you the information, is this a good time as I'm walking in the door? So creating those time restraints lowers guards. Next up, connection. These are things that you create connection. These are basic, I know a lot of these things I'm talking about you guys have known, you guys are all very professional salespeople, service people, whatever you view yourself as, you are professional, you know how to connect with people. But let's talk through some of the basics of connection with our clients. First thing is someone's name. We all have heard Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends, Influence People. The most important sound, the sweetest sound to someone is their name. How many of you have been calling a client by their name like over and over again, and then they correct you and they tell you that's not what they go by? And you're like, oh, yeah, you can raise your hands. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. So that happened to me once, and after that, I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to always ask. So I say, oh, your name says Elizabeth. Do you go by Elizabeth? Oh, no, I prefer Miss Betty. All right, now I'm going to call you Miss Betty. Some that are really uncommon, or like, you got the Esther. Oh, okay, do you go by Esther? Is it okay if I call you Esther? No, I go by Queen Esther. All right, I will call you Queen Esther. Or Martha. No, I go by Miss Marty. Or I'll say, Miss Martha. Oh, just call me Martha. I will ask, what do you prefer to be called? Or what do your friends and family call you? What do you like to be called? And then use that the whole time. If someone says, oh, no, I go by Elizabeth, I say, oh, okay. The reason I ask is some people go by their middle name, and my dad's name is Donald, but if anyone calls him Donald, we know that they don't know him because everybody calls him Don. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then a lot of times people say, I really appreciate you asking me. So don't just use a name. Ask them what they prefer to be called, what they prefer to go by. Second thing is eye contact. I think there's a fine line between connecting with eye contact and being creepy with eye contact. So make sure that you're learning that line, because if you make eye contact so long that it gets creepy, it actually raises the guards and lowers the trust. I've had people that I'm like, you are trying way too hard. Just look away every once in a while, you don't have to look into my soul, okay? But when we're talking with our clients, there's sometimes it's very difficult to engage in eye contact. Sometimes our clients are not used to making eye contact. They're used to watching television. They're used to being by themselves. And they don't know, they're uncomfortable with eye contact. But it's a good connection, And one of the things I love to do when I work with our seniors is to make sure that I'm valuing them as an individual and bringing them dignity. Sometimes they never get to experience that. And sometimes that means like a simple touch. If I'm sitting there, across from a woman or next to a woman, I'll touch her knee a little bit or touch her shoulder. Depending on the situation, a simple touch is connection. I don't do it a lot. I'm not a big touchy person when it comes to my clients, but I will a little bit to build that connection. And also, I do it with people who I know they don't get touched very often. They are alone, they're isolated, and they don't have that human connection. So going back to the thing with the eye contact, if you're struggling with getting eye contact, someone just doesn't want to actually make eye contact with you, one of the greatest tools is to take your pen, pointing at your brochure and everything with your pen, and I'll take my pen, I'm showing them something in my presentation book, I tap on the presentation book, and usually it's kind of sitting in my lap, and then I'll move my knee a little bit so it lowers the presentation book, tapping on it with this, and then I'm taking the pen, and they're following the pen with their eyes, and I'll bring it up, and I'll tap on my temple, making sure I'm not, getting pen on myself, but tap on my temple, and now they're looking at my eyes. And I engage with them for just a moment in that eye contact. Or I'll say, here, let me show you something, and I take something that I'm holding, and I hold it up by my face, and it looks like that's just the way I'm holding it. But what I'm doing is I'm bringing their eyes up to look in my eyes. This is a great rapport builder. You want to make sure that you have the connection, because a connection lower the guards and raises the trust. So, building the connection. You want to make sure you're looking pleasant, smiling. Just don't smile when they're telling you about someone who just passed away. You got to learn how to have your body language in sync with what is being said and what you're saying. I've had it before where I'm just so focused on connecting and smiling all the time. I'm they're telling me about this tragic thing, and I still have that smile on my face. I'm oh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. So make sure, this is really key right here. Your body language is not only in sync with what you're saying, but is also in sync with what they are saying. To build rapport, you want to be in sync with the person you're sitting across from. We've done different studies on mirroring the person. If you're sitting across from someone and they're leaning down, you kind of lean down. If they lean up, you lean up. There's a fine line to that too, because that can get just weird. So make sure that if you are mirroring them with your body language, you're doing it very discreetly, very subtly. But one of the things with body language is to make sure you're in sync with what you're saying. To be in sync with what you're saying, you have to, 100% have to speak with integrity. Because if you're saying something that is just a little on the edge, you don't really quite mean it, or you don't really know what you're saying, but you think maybe that's right, or you're telling a story and you change the facts just a little bit because it would fit the situation a little better that you're talking to, your body language will not be in sync with what you're saying. And that is going to lower the trust and raise the guards, which is the opposite for what we're doing to build rapport. So connection, make sure that you're following these points for connection. Your body language, your eye contact, using their names. Next up, professionalism. So we are professionals when it comes to funeral and final expenses. Some of you Medicare. You are professionals, and therefore you need to carry yourself in a professional mannerism. So I'm going to go through a couple tips on professionalism. Again, a lot of this stuff is basic, but it's a good reminder. The first thing with being professional is your attire. How are you dressed? Are you wearing wrinkly clothes that just came out of the laundry hamper? Are you looking nice? I dress very simply when I'm out selling. A basic polo shirt that has a logo on it and a skirt. That's it. And I do the same old outfit every single day, and I also wear my badge. I don't know how many of you all have some sort of identification, whether it's your license or a badge or something that you wear that identifies you as a professional. A professional is someone who is trusted automatically because they are a professional. Professional means someone who's skilled in what they do. They're knowledgeable. They've taken courses or training. So if you are ill and you are sick, you want to go to a doctor, not some neighbor who likes to talk about health and who likes to talk about ailments, because your neighbor who talks about health and stuff is not a professional. And if you have a problem and you want your problem to be solved, you go to a professional. A professional has a certain level of qualifications that automatically raises the trust. If you go to someone who has a title doctor, Most of the time, if they have good reviews, you trust them, or they were referred to you, you trust them. With professionals, there's certain things that we as professionals get to say that puts us in a position of being a professional. You don't have to say, hello, my name's Helena, I am a professional. It is all about how you carry yourself. If you said that, you would really, people would be like, you are not a professional, you are weird. So make sure that you are saying things that a professional says. And when I say that, I don't mean talking above their head. I don't mean speaking in things that they're not going to understand, like, oh, do you have a contingent beneficiary? That's very professional to say, but if you just say, now, if the first person that you have the money to go to, if they die before you, who do you want the money to go to? Simplify it. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about keeping things simple. Don't talk in such a way that they don't understand, but professionals have a certain way of saying things and carrying themselves that non-professionals don't have. So one reason that you can tell if someone's a professional is by the way that they ask questions and the way that they approach question asking. So if you go to a doctor, again, we're using the analogy of a doctor. You go to a doctor, they don't say, I really hate to ask you this because it's socially incorrect, but how much do you weigh? They don't say that. They say, okay, come right in here, hop up on the scales. The nurse takes your height and your weight. They put it down in your chart, and you go on. They're not asking, is it okay if we ask your weight because we're not supposed to ask women their weight? No. As a professional in insurance, you can ask direct questions. You can ask them their height and weight. You don't have to hem and haw around that. You don't have to feel bad about it. You're a professional. That's part of your job. All right, so Susan, what's your height and what's your weight? Okay, thank you. And then you can go right in. Now I'm going to ask you some health questions to see what you're eligible for. And you go right into the health questions. These are questions that only a professional can ask. They're questions that someone who's not a professional would be inappropriate or socially unacceptable for them to ask. So as a professional, you get to ask questions that other people can't ask. Also, by asking those questions, you set yourself aside as a professional. I had an agent once who I was talking to, and he said, Helena, I grew up in a house where my mother never told her age. It was a taboo to ask a woman her age. I have a really hard time talking about age with my clients who are women. I said, it's because you view yourself as just someone who's there, not as a professional. Because as a professional, you have to know their age. Most of our lead cards, or cards that we get, have their birth date on them. Right? Yes? I know you all work different ones. Okay, good. So you have their birth date, but one of the reasons that I ask their age, and I'll do that immediately in the house, I read back the card, and then I say, now, Mrs. Smith, it says you must be between the age of 45 and 85 to qualify. How old are you currently? I have their birth date right in front of me, but I'm asking because I'm immediately setting myself aside as being a professional who can ask questions in a kind and professional way. They'll tell me, I write it down. It also sets the precedent that I'm comfortable asking questions, asking direct questions, which then when I get into things like, now, who's going to pay for your funeral and final expenses when you die? It doesn't sound so abrupt. I can ask that straightforward, just like that. Now, who's going to be responsible to take care of things when you die? I don't say, if you pass away someday. No, it's when you die, because I'm a professional and I have professionalism that allows me to speak in a way that non-professionals can't speak. So, the questions that you ask and the attitude that you approach each client, and then also next thing with professionalism is be organized. This is something that I'm not saying that if you have a new product or something, you're not really sure where something is, you're not a professional. But what I'm saying is, like, if you are constantly forgetting things, missing things, you can't find things in your bag, you will not look very professional. It's very basic. I told you a lot of this is just going to be super basic stuff, but be organized. Know where your products are. Know where your brochures are. Know where your gifts are that you're giving to them. Be organized. And then the last thing on this is making sure that when you're there, if they want to see any kind of validation of who you are, that you have something, that you have your license or your license number, that you can show them, I'm licensed by the state of Ohio or West Virginia, wherever I'm at, and I have that there to show them that I am a professional and I am there with their best interest in mind. So next up, confidence. All right, so this kind of ties it into, what are you? Who are you? Are you confident in what you're doing? Do you believe that what you're doing is the best for the client? If you do, you're going to carry a level of confidence that you won't have if you're not really sure if this is what you should be doing. So I'm going to ask a really embarrassing question for some of you. How many of you, well, let me first do this. How many of you sell final expense life insurance? Raise your hand. Wow, most of you guys. Okay. How many of you all have a life insurance policy on yourself? Raise your hand. Oh, good. A lot of you. Not all of you that raised your hand the first time, though. Yeah, I actually can see that, actually. I know some of you are like, maybe kind of don't. I'm thinking about it. So you have to have a policy on yourself if you were telling someone else they should have a policy. Maybe not a final expense policy, but a life insurance policy. I'm younger, but I have a policy. And what I also did, this was fun. Most of you should do this too. I got a policy on my mom, and I had her get it on all the grandkids. And so then when I'm showing someone, I say, this is the same company that I have my mother with, and all of her grandkids are on it as well. It builds a level of confidence in what you're doing when you can say, I believe in this enough that I've done it. I had one agent tell me once, they're like, oh man, I'm just not able to get policy over, $20-25 a month. I was like, really? Like my average policy is like $50-60 a month. Like we got a discrepancy here. And I was watching his numbers, and sure enough, this was happening across the board. I said, why? Why is it? He said, they just can't afford it. And I said, they can't afford it or you can't afford it? And he's like, huh? I said, let me ask you, do you have a policy on yourself? Yeah. How much is it a month? Oh, like $30. I said, if I told you right now that you need to take out a policy on yourself that was going to be $100, what would you say? He's like, nuh-uh, I can't afford it. I said, exactly. You have now lowered the confidence in the product to the point that you don't have he was struggling, you don't have the finances to have a more expensive policy on yourself. So you don't have the confidence to offer that to your clients. So you have to have the confidence in what you're doing. I don't mean that every one of you has to have a $100 policy on yourself, but you have to have the confidence that what you're doing is absolutely the best thing for your client. Next up, for confidence, have a great level of knowledge of the products that you're selling. If you get a new product in your bag, learn it, read it, go through it. And if you're like me and you really don't like learning products, like I told you, I like people. I like relational things. I don't like learning products. Then get someone in your life like Andy back here. He was my buddy on the road. He knew products. He knew products really well. He was in my favorites list with texting. I mean, I would be like, Andy, I got this person with this and this and this. What should I do? But Andy will tell you that I didn't ask him the same question over and over and over again. Once he told me, once he showed me, hey, this is the company, this is the product, this is the best thing, I knew it, I learned it, and I ran with it. So make sure that you're surrounded by people who can help you. That's what this is all about right here. But also take time to learn it and to grow. And I did learn products, I did study products, but it's just, it wasn't something I enjoyed doing. Some of you guys geek out and you're like, yeah. Andy's like, I can't sleep at night, so I'm in the office reading through applications. I'm like, you are awesome, because you're on our team and I get to text you and ask you questions later. But that's not really what I do when I can't sleep at night. But anyway, so know your products, because knowledge builds competence, and competence builds confidence. So you have to be competent in what you're doing to be confident. Competence builds confidence. All right, and the next thing on here, the last thing on this one, is the same back going with professionalism. And I'm going to keep hitting on this, is you have to be truthful in what you're saying and doing. There's areas in this business that are a little bit gray, and you're by yourself in a house with someone, and that gray area comes up. If you're not for sure, again, reach out and find the answer. Don't assume. Don't just be like, I think this I'll just slide it around here. That's probably not a big deal. You take that medication, it's probably not a big deal. Don't do that, because that is going to not only affect the quality of your business and affect your clients, it's also going to, over time, it's going to begin to erode your confidence if you're not walking in integrity. And it's going to show up in your body language. It's going to show up in how you're doing. So ask yourself these questions. Do you believe in what you're doing? Do you know your stuff? Is your body language in sync with what you're saying? So make sure that you know your stuff for confidence. Positivity. So this is one that I'm going to stay on for just a minute here. How many of you all have had a difficult morning and you get in the car and you are frustrated, and you get to the first house and you are frustrated, and you try to suck it all up, put a smile on your face, and you go into that house? How many of you guys have done that? If you all have been in the business very long, I really hope every one of you is raising your hand because I'll feel really bad if not. Because I view myself as a positive person, and that happens to me. I remember talking to Chris one day, and I was like, man, I was just having a really rough morning, and I got to my first house, and I kept driving. I didn't stop because I was having such a bad morning that I'm like, I am going to drive, and I'm going to listen to positive audio. We have training audio I was listening to. I'm going to do this until I get myself out of this bad mood. And he's like, what happens to you? I'm like, yeah, I think it happens to all of us. And so if you take negativity into a home with you, that person has no idea what just happened in your house. They have no idea that you and your wife are disagreeing, or you and your wife are not communicating well, or your husband. They have no idea that your finances are kind of crazy right now, or that someone in your family was just in a car wreck. They don't know what's going on in your life. All they know is what you're projecting, is how the mannerisms that you have right now, how you're carrying yourself. And if you walk into a place and you have negativity in your mind, you are dealing with stuff, and you haven't resolved it, it is going to overflow by your body language, by your mannerisms, by what you're saying to your client. And they won't know what's going on, but they won't trust you. Because they're not going to be able to sense what it is, but they're going to know something's off. And when something's off, the guards go up, the trust goes down. And our goal with building rapport is to lower the guards and raise the trust. So make sure that you are walking in positivity. There's a number of different ways to do this, but first one is make sure that you are associating with positive people. If you have people that call you while you're out in the field and it's like, I'm having the worst day ever. We've all had people in our lives like that. And every time you see their number come up, you're like, they're going through the worst day ever again. It's going to be worse than the worst day ever was yesterday. Didn't know that could happen. It gets really depressing. And there have been times where I've had people and I'm like, listen, I don't mind talking with you, but I can't talk with you when I'm out selling because it's not good for my clients and it's not good for me, and it really doesn't even help you. So make sure that the people that you're talking with have that candid conversation if you need to. If someone's going through something difficult in their life and you want to be involved in their life and you want to stay a part of their life, or that there's someone you can't get rid of, you're married to them or whatever. I mean, I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I'm saying. There's someone who's close to you, and you're not going to just say cutting off communication completely. Have a candid conversation and say, hey, when I'm in the field, I need to have full focus, which means that we can't have this conversation right now. Make sure that you have those conversations ahead of time, or if you are going through that right now, that you just pause and say, okay, what can I do to make sure that I'm remaining positive? Or maybe you have a really bad house that you're in, and the people have a bad policy, and it's overpriced, and it's not good coverage, and you can save them like $20 a month and get them good coverage, and they just won't change. And you're just like, can I not break through to you? And you leave so frustrated. You're like, I could help them so much, and they wouldn't let me help them. That's the most frustrating to me. It's like, I can help you, and you won't let me help you. And I just get so upset, and I get in the car, I'm like, okay, breathe, it's okay. But if you carry that with you to the next house, they have no idea what just happened. All they know is something's wrong, even if you have a smile, even if you're saying the right things. So you have to walk in positivity. You have to learn, this is my key, emotional resilience. Learn how to develop and grow your emotional resilience. Like Derek said last night, you're not going to rise to the occasion, you're going to default to your training. Train yourself day in and day out to be emotionally resilient. Have people that you can vent to, but that the conversation always ends positively. So if you're having a bad day and you need to talk it through with someone, do it, but train yourself that by the end of that 30 seconds or 1 minute that you say, this is a really difficult day. I'm really struggling here. Here's what's happening. By the end of that conversation, you turn it around and you're like, okay, that felt good. So I just also met this really great woman, and she did this and this and this, and she gave me a Coke while I was in the house, and the house was clean. It was really nice. Or, she told me about her grandkids, and you change the tone. Don't get off the phone when you're venting with a negative vibe in the air. Make sure that you have that trained in there the emotional resilience. So a couple of things to become emotionally resilient is learn how to, I'll call these your triggers. Learn what your triggers are. If you start to get frustrated and you can tell I'm going down that frustrated path, be aware, be self-aware, and stop it. Stop it in the tracks. And sometimes this means speaking positivity into your own life, but a lot of times it means hearing it from someone else. When I'm facing the windshield and I'm going from door to door to door, if I am negative, which it happens, even when I have great weeks. I've had weeks before where I was having such a bad day and I felt like it was a bad week, and then I looked back and was like, oh, I did 8K last week. I was actually a good week. Like it wasn't bad, even though there were so many moments that felt really frustrated. There are so many moments where I was really frustrated, how about that I came back feeling like I had a frustrating week. So you have to get perspective. If you're just so focused on yourself and what you're doing, you'll lose perspective. Get people in your life who will speak perspective into your life, and then also make sure that you are in control of your thoughts, because you have the ability to let that keep going, and you also have the ability to control what you think, to renew your mind, to stop and say, no, I'm not going to allow this negativity to continue in my mind. And I have a couple of things that I do. Last conference, I shared about my Girl on Fire song. I'm not doing that this time, where I listen to it, I kind of pump myself up. But more often than not, just taking a couple of minutes and just thinking through, listing through what I'm thankful for. Spending a few minutes in prayer, just saying, okay, God, this is what's going on. I just thank you for your blessings, and going through promises and truth. And one of the practices that I've really gotten into that really helps is take all the negativity and ask yourself, is this a truth or a lie? If it's a lie, what is the truth to combat it? So if you say no one's home, what's the truth? Just haven't gotten to the people that are home yet. I'm going to keep going till I get to them. Thank you. If you have a lie that no one can afford it, what's the truth? People do. You look at the One Life leaderboard, people are still buying insurance. There's people out there writing $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 every week. So there's obviously people out there who can afford it. So keep going. There are so many lies that we will start getting in our mind that we will believe if we don't immediately stop them and combat them with truth. So make sure that you are believing truth, dispelling the lies, and that builds that emotional resilience. Another thing, listen to what you're putting inside your minds, not just the people that you're associating with, people you're talking to, people you're around, but listen to good audio. You guys have drive time. That's one reason I like working in the country, is because I have 5-10 minutes between houses, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour. In the city, it's more like 2 to 3 minutes. You don't really get that audio time. But going out in the car, there's all kinds of audio resources that you can get, that you can plug into, that can help you to reprogram your mind, reset your mind. I've done a lot of conference calls for our company. There have been so many times that I've been driving and I turn on the audio and it's my voice talking to me, speaking truth into my mind, and it really helps. So no matter where it's coming from, make sure that you're listening to truth. You're listening to things that are going to help you and better you so you can build your emotional resilience. And lastly, to kind of close this up here, I have 2 quick things to avoid when you want to lower guards and build trust. And the first one is avoid correcting. We know this in life in general, but when you're talking to somebody and they tell you, oh yeah, funeral, burial, all that kind of stuff, that costs like $1,500. I know, because my aunt just died and that's what their family paid for it. You're sitting there thinking, yeah, because they had a prepaid funeral and the $1,500 was probably the opening and closing. But don't correct directly, because you will lose credibility and rapport, because in her mind, that was the cost. In her mind, that's what they paid for. So to avoid correcting but still give the correct information, most of the time I won't deal with something direct on, but I know in my mind that this lady thinks it's $1,500 for everything. So that means that when I get too close to the point where I'm going to start talking about what she needs for her funeral, I'm going to pull out the brochure from a local funeral home, and I'm going to show her the price breakdown. So if you decide to do a burial here in Caldwell, this is what you're looking at Chandler Funeral Home. And I'll show them. I just spoke to Mr. Chandler, to Brian Chandler a little bit ago, and this is what he showed me. That's one reason why whenever you're in a different town than you normally sell, stop at the local funeral home and get their price list. It builds credibility. Takes you 2 minutes. Every funeral home will give it to you. Just walk in, say, hey, I'd like the general price list. They'll give it to you. Ask them for their name and thank them. Write their name at the top. And so I was talking to Mr. Chandler, the funeral home director there at Chandler, Brian. Oh, yeah, we know him. This is what he said. And I showed them the list. I'm talking about this, 10 minutes later. I never directly corrected her, even though I'm bringing correction to her thought process. And she now trusts me because I'm showing her the information. The same thing when it comes to, I don't do anything through my checking or savings account. I do money orders for everything. Oh, that's great. I don't directly correct or adjust what she's saying, but I'm going to come back around a little bit later, 15 minutes later, 10 minutes later. I'm going to be telling a story about this person who, they did automatic pay, or they didn't do automatic payments. They went in the hospital. They lost their policy. So now all of our companies have it set up for your safety and convenience automatically through a checking or savings account. And I go back around. So I'm not directly correcting, even though I do give them the correct information later. So avoid correcting and avoid hitting objections straight on. I've seen this so many times. I've been on different ride-alongs with a lot of different people. And, if you push, the other person's going to push. If you apply pressure, they're going to apply pressure. It's going to be a match. And you kind of get locked into this pressure. And whoever loosens up first is going to lose, that kind of thing. So if you get an objection and you're feeling that tension building, change the subject. Move the pressure. So if they say, I'm going to talk to my kids, I'm not going to do anything till I talk to my kids. And you say, actually, this is something you do for your kids, not with your kids, and you need to do this now for them. This is something, and they're like, no, I'm going to talk to my kids. And they're like, well, this is actually something it's really important that you get taken care of now. No, I need to talk to my kids. When that starts happening, you've lost. So you need to come back around to, if they say, I need to talk to my kids about this, say, oh, that's great. That's awesome. And then a little bit later, you can bring it up 5 minutes down the road. Most of my clients like to do this for their kids, not with their kids, because you know what? Nobody likes to talk about mom and dad dying. Nobody likes to think about it. And at that point, they're going to say, you're right. I've tried to talk to my kids about this 3 or 4 times. They won't let me talk about the funeral. It's too hard on them. They get emotional. I said, yeah, that's right. That's why you do this for them and not with them. You're right. You're right. It happens over and over again. When you don't hit the objection head on, move the pressure, come back around. Or if there's a lot of pressure, I will totally change the topic, and I can do it. It's so much fun. It's such a game. So there's so much pressure. We're sitting there, and the person's like, no. And I'll just stop, and I'll look at them, and I'm like, do you like candles? They're like, candles? And I'll reach in my bag, and I carry candles with me. And they're so thrown off because there's pressure, and they're frustrated, whatever. They don't like it. The emotions are high. Nobody talks about funerals. And they're like, candles? And I say, yeah, I love candles. I have this cinnamon. Open it up, and I'll take a big whiff. It smells so good. Smell it. And they're smelling. And they're like, oh, that smells good. And they hand it back. I'm like, no, you keep it. And they're like, really? So yeah, my mom always taught me, if you go to someone's house, you take a hospitality gift. So this is for you. Thank you for having me in your home. The pressure is gone. At this point now, we're talking about candles and cinnamon and whether they like winter or summer better. And the pressure's gone. I come back to my presentation book a minute later, and some of you guys are like, yeah, that works for you. It's not going to work I can see it on your faces. It works for guys too. Right, Andy? No, it works. So one of the things you can do though too, I do it also if I'm just me with a guy. Sometimes I'll do candles, but also I'll do those Werther caramels or a book. So I have alternate options because sometimes I'll say something about candles and they're like, oh no, I don't burn candles, I'm not allowed to. I'm like, oh okay. Would you like to read? And I pull out this little book that I have. This is Don Howe's success book. My dad wrote this. I always say this. My dad wrote this. I'm so proud of him. And they're like, oh, that's so sweet. And I give it to them. Or they, the candy, whatever it is, keep some gifts. They're small. Those candles come from the dollar store, and they're tiny. But it's a nice little glass candle. The Werther's candies, those come from the dollar store. The success books, you can get them on donhowsuccess.com. They're $1 a piece. They're nice. So when you are giving a gift, it relieves pressure. And when you're sitting there and there's an objection that's coming, or they won't get off of a certain topic and the tension is just rising, or the husband and wife start arguing. Y'all have been in that. It's like super uncomfortable where he's like, we ain't doing anything. And she's like, but I really want to. And what happens if you die and I'm left with all this? And like the tension is so strong. Don't just jump in immediately, but when it gets to the point where you're like, something has to happen right now, that's when you pull out your distractions, whatever you want to call them. And I love to give gifts because gift giving also builds rapport, lowers the guard, raises the trust. So that's what I've got. So make sure that you're connecting, that you are putting time restraints in. We'll run through them real quick. Professionalism, being professional. You're working in confidence. Make sure you've got confidence. That was great. Thank you. No, you're good. That you have that confidence, the positivity, and the last thing to avoid, objections, hitting them straight on, and avoid correction or criticizing your clients and their thought processes. So that's all I've got. I'm turning it over to Alan.